I love this bright red and pink one with some golden layers in there. This one reads, "May I stand before opposition with strong patience. May I stand before opposition with strong patience." Friends, this is SatiSeva. And SatiSeva is an affinity group associated with Recovery Dharma. Sati means mindful. Seva means service. And this is a collection of 16 mindfulness practices inspired by the work of Thich Nhat Hanh, all designed, all written and curated to reimagine how we approach recovery personally and how we approach supporting other people who are recovering their whole selves as well. You've heard me say this multiple times, but it bears repeating. A number of years ago, 6 years ago, really, when I started pursuing this because of community members really wanting a support group and support environment in a Buddhist tradition, something like a Buddhist Al-Anon. So we started in that vein where people in the idea of traditional recovery over here, and then support people over here, separated. And, there's merit in having separate spaces, but I quickly realized that from my point of view anyway, negative habit energy, what we call addiction, has so many faces. It is very human and universal. And why not have everyone come together and just use the practices of mindfulness to explore how habit energy is appearing for me and how to learn to become more supportive to myself and therefore by extension to everyone else. So that really is the spirit of SatiSeva, where we're really taking ownership in a mindful way of how is habit energy showing up in my life, creating negativity, creating dysfunction, creating disordered thinking, really limiting the magnificence of my life. How can I accept it? How can I see it clearly? How can I heal it? All knowing that effort, by extension, is offered to others. We wrote a book about it. It's a big book. And we've been slowly chatting about it. And today we're going to continue our conversation in the third chapter, which is the cultivation of space as generosity. And on Wednesday, we were talking about creating space by way of wise speech. Really looking at our language, broadening our language, broadening our vocabulary as a way of really leaning in to a deeper understanding. So on Wednesday, I talked about getting a thesaurus and working with synonyms and just becoming word geeks, And so I'd like to continue that vein, and I'd like to share with you a little section called Giving and Receiving. And giving and receiving is this idea, this reciprocity practice, this mutuality practice that I want to create space around, because I notice when I interact with people on a very regular basis, people often say, I'm really good at giving and I'm terrible at receiving. And just take a minute. Is that you? I know it's been me in the past, and now I'm awesome at receiving. Awesome. But it's a practice. I had to get there. I had to really work with it. And so if you're of that mind, if you've been telling that story, I'm really good at receiving, but I keep everybody at arm's length when I go to receive. This is a practice to think about. This is an invitation to create space around, because giving and receiving are two sides to the same spirit. So if you're not very good at receiving, your giving is in question. And I know that sounds stark, but remember our sentiment of metta. May I stand before opposition with strong patience. So you may feel a stir opposing the idea that, no, I'm really good at giving and I'm terrible at receiving. That can exist. It's true. And not the whole truth. The truth is that if we are wobbly in our receiving, there are aspects to our giving that are wobbly too. And this is what we are going to fearlessly and with great compassion and patience explore. Why? We have to create space around it in order to really embody generosity. That is the spirit of giving and receiving. It is generous to be giving. It is also incredibly generous to receive. Why? When we have a true spirit of receiving, that generosity extends to someone else by giving them opportunities to be giving. Isn't that beautiful? When you receive, you afford someone else an opportunity to give. So just breathe that in for a second. And this is particularly relevant in the realm of recovery because part of the disorder of substance use and misuse specifically is isolation. And one of the narratives associated with isolation is, I don't need any help. I don't want any help. I don't want anyone to see me. I don't want to receive anything, good or bad. And when that happens, the space around the mind, the space around the heart tightens, clamps down, narrows. We become more and more limited, more and more shut in. And so the mindfulness practice of space is to open that up. But we're not ripping off any band-aids here, friends. This is a gentle massage. This is a beautiful, gooey kneading of focaccia bread dough. This is squishy and soft and explorative and playful and fun and beautiful. So find a posture in your body, if you haven't arrived already, that feels nice and easy. Allow yourself to be fully relaxed. And let me share with you this section. If you're following along or reading along, I'm on page 69, and this is a section called Giving and Receiving. Let's create space around the word generosity. Synonyms for generosity are benevolence, hospitality, magnanimity, kindness, open-handedness, bounty. Antonyms for generosity include mean, meager, selfish. When I was perusing my thesaurus, I fully expected to see the word giving as the first synonym for generosity. I grew up in a Catholic household governed by the belief that to be generous meant being giving. Looking back, I realized the giving I often witnessed was distorted. Most often, I saw women bestowing their time and talent until they had nothing left to offer but resentment wrapped actions. They were pre martyred souls, burned out and taken advantage of. I doubt many of these women had a clue that they could exercise boundaries and extinguish the toxic expectation that to be good and accepted was to be tirelessly available. I learned early on this was not the kind of generosity I wanted to cultivate. As I grew up, I committed myself to working in underserved communities where people were often ignored or misunderstood. In each endeavor, the theme of generosity was ever present. I was just one person with limited resources, aspiring to meet a sea of 24/7 need. I learned to give myself space to look inward and ask, what exactly am I giving? What do I want to give? What is the best form of soulful generosity for my spirit? In my 20s, I learned that when I took good care of myself, this translated into better care for others. Why are the most obvious realities often the easiest to ignore? I also learned that there was never going to be enough money or resources to fix all the ills of the world. The depth of greed rampant in our human legacy was too great and would require many lifetimes of healing and transformative effort. I felt deeply that there would never be enough time for me to accomplish all the ways I aspired to serve. That realization humbled me and gave me permission to keep my efforts simple, manageable, and achievable. I would never have been able to understand these aspects of generosity and giving without space to explore and question. So take that in for just a minute. And then I'd like to offer a practice of inquiry. This is one of the practices that goes throughout the book. And this is my way of just entertaining questions without any real urgency for their answers, just to let the question sit and be. So I want to, before I go into those questions, I just want to emphasize that I was surprised that generosity does not mean giving alone. So I wanted to bring forward again some different meanings and just see how they resonate in your mind and heart. To be generous is to be benevolent, magnanimous, hospitable, kind, open-handed, bountiful. To be the opposite of generous is to be mean, selfish, meager. Aren't those great words? And one of the things that's interesting about the word selfish, and this is worth exploring, is selfishness is a highly egocentric state of mind. And one of the things about this Buddhist practice that I really appreciate when working with the ego is there are a lot of spiritual practices that sort of suggest that you can get rid of the ego. And in fact, that's the goal. And that might be for some people. That's not the goal for me. I have an ego for a reason. My goal is to simply understand the way it lives on the spectrum of my life and can go in very distorted spaces, distorted in the positive and distorted in the negative. So, looking at the word selfish, when I'm selfish in the positive, it's an interesting thing to think about. What does that look like for me when I'm selfish in the positive? Well, there's a if I'm going to treat selfishness in the negative, kind of that negative connotation where it's not a good thing to be selfish, then even in the positive version of it, it appears for me as overconfidence, arrogance. In the negative, where I'm selfish because I'm all about me, this is where I'm the worst person in the world. So when my ego is really being selfish in the worst ways, I'm often either the best person in the world, and that's sort of like the narcissist in me that's just really inflated and distorted and arrogant and confident and all those things, but in a really, really convoluted way. Or I'm the worst person in the world. When I'm selfish, in an essence that, in a spirit motivated by self understanding, self acceptance, then I can look at those qualities of arrogance, confidence, inflation, distortion, the worst person in the world, awful, lazy, horrible. I can look at that from a neutral point of view. And when I can do that, I become more selfless. So, in some ways, I have to exercise some selfishness. I have to be thinking about how am I showing up on the spectrum of life? That's a selfish act. Yes, I am self exploring. I'm trying to self accept. I'm trying to self understand. I'm trying to improve self love rather than self loathing. All of those things are full of self. You might even call it selfish. Yes, but the motivation is to become selfless. The more I understand myself, the less in my mind, the less self protecting I am. And that is an extraordinary act of generosity. Why? Because the more I understand myself, the more pure my presence is to others. I'm not distorting others because I'm overlaying myself on them. But I can't get there if I don't enhance that quality of space to really look at myself clearly. So let's ask a couple of questions here. And I'm not going to go through all of them. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 9 questions. So the first question I encourage you to wonder about is, do I believe that to be giving is to be good? There's no wrong answer here, friends. It's just a simple question. Do I believe that to be giving is to be good? And then the next question is, why do I believe that? Where did that come from? Here's a question for you. What are the conditions of giving that feel positively easy? What are the conditions where being giving feel hard and pressured? I'm going to throw an example in here, just a personal example. For me, one of the conditions that makes giving feel a little pressured and I feel resistance is whenever my giving is sprinkled with any kind of obligation. And it's a funny kind of thing because I don't always know what that's about. So a perfect example is getting together with family or coworkers, particularly my husband, when years ago when we'd have to do a lot of public events for his work. And I was obligated to go along. And there was this kind of wee wifey role and, just all the things. And, ugh, it was so hard to give time for that sometimes. And I would feel all this resistance, like, I don't want to go. And my little kid, my little adolescent would rise up and I'd feel all whiny about it. And then I'd buck up and I'd brush my hair and wash my face. And okay, we're going to do this and go. And I'd inevitably have a great time. But there was that weird obligation. I can't even really tell you what the legacy of that is. It just would rise up. I'd have to deal with it and then get over it. What is a condition where it's easy to give? Well, there's lots of those for me. And again, this whole practice of inquiry and this whole practice of creating space is even allowing the judgments to come forward. So there are times where I can judge myself rather harshly for having that resistance. And I would say to myself, Julia, get over yourself. It's so and so's grandmother's birthday. You can, you know, get over yourself, Julia, that kind of thing. Once I started creating space for just, oh, well, there's the resistance. There's that spirit of obligation. Okay. There's the judgment that I'm putting on myself. Okay, there it is. I see it. And we're still going to go to Granny's birthday party. And it's going to be fine. And guess what, Julia? By creating this space, you can put up a really healthy boundary here so that it doesn't have to be about you at all. You can be fully present to this other person, celebrate them fully, be with just them. You are taking care of you in your own space. Now it's time to give presence to someone else. I couldn't do any of that when I was operating from a place of self, small self, That part of me that said, oh, you're such a jerk for having this attitude. That judgment was so tightening, so limiting, and it really benefited from having some space. Wow, look at that judgment. That's harsh. It might even be true and not the whole truth. Let's come full circle and ask the question, what are the conditions in your life where it's easy to receive? And what are the conditions in your life where it's not easy to receive? And can you create space for both to simply be? What are the conditions for giving with ease and resistance? What are the conditions for receiving with ease and resistance? That's the practice. And to create space for all of it is an act of extraordinary generosity to yourself and by extension to every single person you encounter. This is a practice, friends. So go gently and shine a quiet light in these darker spaces. And above all else, enjoy this practice. I'd like to take a few moments now to just be quiet and use the breath as a place to anchor the mind, but just to allow a lot of space for the mind to wander around. Breathing in, be present to your mind. Breathing out, give it lots of space to be. Friends, one of the things that is important to remember about the mindfulness practice of space is its sister. Space is sister to time, and time is an ally. And why I bring this forward is there's some habit energy that I notice in myself when it comes to space, and it's wrapped in a little bit of language. So I'll say to people, my loved ones, family members, things like that, and I'll just say, I need a little bit of space. I'm just going to have a little space. And again, becoming more wise and more impeccable in my speech, it would be an act of generosity and of kindness to be able to clarify that a little bit. So, does that mean I'm going to leave? Does that mean I'm going to take days, hours? What does it look like taking some space? And it changes all the time. It depends on the conditions. And so now what I say, some of the language that I use is, I'm going to enjoy some sacred solitude this afternoon so I can contemplate some complex feelings. We had this interaction that was tricky, and I want to be mindful in my response. So I'm going to spend some time this afternoon having a little bit of space to myself so that I can really think about this. I'm going to enjoy some space in the gardens to work out some energy. I feel a taskmaster on my back, and I'm going to grind through some heavy thoughts and then share with you later on this evening or tomorrow if you have time. Whatever, however it comes out. But I just know that for me in my practice, to add a little bit more explanation than just, I need a little space has been really helpful. Not only in clarifying my own mind, but offering some ease to the people with whom I share my life. Space around one's capacity to give and one's capacity to receive as an act of generosity. This has been the practice today. And I'd like to end by just inviting you, if it's comfortable, to bring your left hand to the level of the heart, just the left hand. And just give that heart space a little bit of a press and see if you can feel the warmth of that pressure, of that really gentle squeeze. Giving and receiving are two sides to the same spirit of generosity. To be generous requires space and its sister, time. All of this born at the level of the compassionate heart, where we slow things down, soften, open, and enjoy. All righty, beautiful people. And it has to do with creating space around the judgments that will inevitably arise. And they'll inevitably and even sometimes involuntarily arise. So I was listening to Colin's share about sort of the eavesdropping on the other couple that were talking about recovery, and they were using an approach that is so outside of my own wheelhouse that it just infused me with a whole bunch of cringe even as I was listening to it. And then I was like, oh wow, look at all that judgment coming up. So how the instrument of peace that I work with, that I created for myself to create space around this, is called ugh to ooh. Okay, and this is how it works. So when I heard, thank you to Jesus and the King of Kings, and yet I was like, oh, that just lands so off note for me. And that's just real for me. Ugh, there it is. Okay. Ooh, what can I see here? What can I learn here? Do I want to act on that judgment? Do I want to really embody that judgment? Or can I create a little space around, wow, they are doing them and it's working for them, and hooray. That's not my thing. And guess what? It doesn't have to be. People can have all kinds of ways of doing their lives that have nothing to do with me. Ooh, look at that. And this is a really playful practice. There. Even when we're in our meh moods, ooh, something might be here. All righty. I love that one. It's my and let me tell you, we do have a Sangha member who let me know that when she first started practicing this instrument with this instrument of peace, she couldn't quite get to the Julia ooh part. She got to her own oh part. So I think that's a very valuable approach too. So ugh, oh, may take you a little bit to get to ooh. So just go gently, people. Make it your own. That's what this is all about. Friends, we get to meet tomorrow at 6 p.m. John will be guiding our practice. And then Tuesday evening, Josh will be back. And then Wednesday and Thursday, Josh will lead. And then I'll be back on Friday. Oh, sorry. Wednesday, Josh, Thursday, Marty. That's right. And we're all gonna. Lo's reminding me that nothing will change other than the facilitators, so it'll still be in person and online. Lo has posted the link to Soul Center, so you can check out our schedule for SatiSeva and Recovery Dharma and the various things that we've got going on. Don't forget, we've got a new token of mindfulness, which are the monthly sentiment of metta cards. So I've compiled 31 cards, 31 of these sentiments of metta. They're all different and they're a limited print. So I had them professionally printed using artwork from me and several other community members. And if you'd like one, it's another way to support the community. And what I'm encouraging people to do is, find a really fun little bowl. This one was made from clothesline wrapped in fabric, and you can pour your sentiments of metta in there. And it's also a practice of write your own, make your own, and mix them with mine, and just create a little ritual for yourself. It's sort of like waking up with the dawn. Just have a little ritual where you pick a sentiment of metta, you pick a sentiment of loving kindness as a way to establish your day, a sentiment to start your day. Wow. What a beautiful thing. And it's particularly wonderful when we will inevitably encounter those people in our lives and those conditions in our lives that land in our own minds and hearts as mean, because it is. And one of the practices about boundaries that we explore in SatiSeva too is to put up a token on the balaclohe on the stone wall that is, this is my perspective of this situation. This is mean. And it's important to put that out there. And to consider for yourself, if you were to ever receive a perspective from someone that said to you, Julia, that was mean, how would you hold it? How do I hold it? It's hard to hold that. My first reaction is to get defensive. My practice reaction is to take that perspective and look at it and go, oh, that's a perspective. That's your perspective. And I'm going to take some space. I'm going to go into my space, my boundaried space to think about it. Because your perspective in relationship to me is that I'm being mean. And that doesn't feel good to me. And that can't feel good to you. I need to think about that. And I wouldn't be able to think about it if people didn't give me those perspectives. I wouldn't be able to become a wiser, more whole person if I didn't receive that information, even though it's hard, even though it's prickly. And so the good practice about this is, how are you delivering your message? How are you giving those messages? Are you hurling the prickly cactus? You fucking mean asshole. Probably not going to be received well. I'm just trying to relate to you, Rick, in Scotland, with using some poetry there. Or are you just going to go, this is going to be hard for you to hear. I'm going to share a perspective, my perspective, that may be hard for you to receive. And I'm going to do it anyway. That lands for me as mean. Practice, friends. So I think that should do it. And let's go ahead now and end our beautiful practice with a dedication of merit. And I'd like to share this sentiment of metta again. May I stand before opposition with strong patience. Maybe a little bit of homework today is to pull out your thesauruses and look up some synonyms for the word patience, just to kind of broaden that experience. What does patience look like? For me, the number one thing that I gain from patience is I slow it all down. So, for our sentiment of metta today, I'd like to share with you this 4-line dedication that I really, really love. And I'm going to repeat it 3 times, but I'm going to change it up a little bit each time. This first time, I'm going to just use the first person I, and I'd like you to listen to it and really take it in for yourself as an anchor. So it goes like this. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be healthy and strong. May I be safe and protected. May I live with ease. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be healthy and strong. May you be safe and protected. May you live with ease. Now just take a minute before we go into this third one and imagine the beautiful landscapes of Ireland and Scotland with all of those stone walls. separating different spaces. You're in one space framed by a beautiful balaclava. Another person is in their space framed by a beautiful boundary. Everybody's seeing everybody, even if that person that you're boundaried with is a jerk, somebody you don't necessarily like. It's okay. You're safe in your spaces. Now we can see each other. May we be happy and peaceful. May we be healthy and strong. May we be safe and protected. May we live with ease. I want to thank you all for your beautiful practice today. You have really, really warmed my heart. I wish you could all come to the farm for salad and soup today. Maybe one day we'll have a great big giant party out there. It would be amazing. Email me with any questions, concerns. Love to hear from you all. Have a wonderful afternoon, friends. We'll see you next time. Namaste.